everybody. Full house. I was just talking about how I'll do like a seminar or a workshop on like how to live to be like 120. Like 7 people will come, but I talk about the freaking thyroid and I sell out of the seats in like 2 days. I'm like, geez. Okay. The people have spoken. So this is going to be a little bit different for those that have been to a lot of my seminars before. There's no PowerPoint. So I did this because I've been reading research and I just found more and more about like glazy, glassed eyes. And most of you watch the screen instead of hearing what I say. And then you ask me the questions and I'm like, well, that's what I was talking about when you were too busy looking at the screens, right? So we're going to try to do this hopefully a little bit more actively. Here, I am recording this, so as long as that doesn't bomb, I'll make sure that everybody that's here tonight, like when I get that, clipped and cropped and everything, we'll send that out so you can, so hopefully you just can listen as much as possible and take more bullet point notes versus trying to write down everything, pictured possible, for all that. So I have a few things. Funny stories just to kind of get me warmed up here a little bit. So first of all, this is more of a cute story, but my daughter, they always come in every single Monday to my wife and my daughter and my son come in to get adjusted on Monday morning. And so she brings me a card today. So I guess that's me, and that's her. And then in here, she's 4.5, so she wrote, she's like, I love you, Daddy. It says in here, from what I can tell, I miss you when you go to work. I'm like, well, sorry, girl, I gotta go to work so I can pay for the clothes you're wearing on that. And my son, so she's the easy one. So my son, who's 2.5, is just in like the total like punk phase right now. Like we don't in our house we don't do like any like really like spanking or anything like that. But like I wanted to pop him in the mouth a good handful of times in the last week. But so he's doing this thing now. He never before, like we would put him down and they're sleep trained. So it's like 6:30, they're down, game over till morning. But there was a storm like 4 months ago, and like that happened like right when he was going to bed, and all of a sudden he's scared. So now it's like literally now like we're in this phase where like it's like put him down, he gets up, it's like 10 times a night, which Nora my daughter just stays in bed. But anyway, so last night, it was like 10:30 and 10 o'clock, and like my wife and I are just like laying in bed, and all of a sudden like you see the little door in our room like kind of open up like a slit, and it's like a little creaky, right? So we're like, oh, what the heck? And we check the monitor, he's not in his bed, so we're like, he's outside the door. And so the next thing you know, it closes, and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, and it was like really, 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 really quiet. So like, okay, we better go do this. So you open up the doors. Well, so he took off his diaper and just peed on the floor. And like I'd never done that before. I'm like,
welcome.
Clearly boys are way worse than girls. And I'm almost certain too that I will tell my story. Next time I talk to my parents, I'll tell that story to my parents, and I did the same thing.
Is that a thyroid issue?
All right, so let's get rolling here. I know I'm going to write, but I'll also move out of the way, so don't get too. My handwriting sucks, but that's why I want you to listen to me more than anything else. All right, so hopefully my new way of doing this doesn't backfire here too much. So biggest thing with thyroid, all right, that I want all of you to take away from tonight is that your thyroid in your body acts like the canary in the coal mine. Everybody familiar with that concept a little bit, right? With miners, they bring a little birdie down with them because they were more sensitive. So if there was, I think, either poisonous gas or oxygen or whatever, a drop of some kind, the canary would die or be dead, and like they'd have to get out of it really fast, okay? So meaning that your thyroid, because of how much blood it that goes through it and how integrated it is with your hormonal system, your endocrine system, and really every system of your body. In fact, every single cell, just so you know how important your thyroid is, every single cell in your body, okay, type brain, heart, muscle, has receptors for thyroid hormone on it, meaning that it needs to be activated or needs to coordinate with that. So the reason why then if the thyroid is not working very well, why more than one thing can be off inside your body. You just don't feel well, metabolism might suck, and then some, right? But the canary in the coal mine, meaning that when your thyroid begins to break down or not function properly, all right, it's a sign, if you have the symptoms, even if your testing is not showing it yet, and we're going to talk about that here, it's a sign that there's something serious going on inside of your body. Now, serious could be defined as different ways. Serious doesn't necessarily mean life-threatening, but it means that there's one or more systems that are being affected in the body. So let's look at all of the main categories, all right, of things that it corrects. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a little audience participation here, and you're going to tell me what you think are likely symptoms in these categories when the thyroid is not working very well. All right, so let me just write down the last couple here. Bone and integumentary, which is skin and other things, and then we got hormonal here too. So these are just kind of the main hormonal. All right, so let's just start at the top. So what do you think are some possible signs and symptoms having to do with your metabolism when your thyroid is not functioning properly?
Weight
Okay. Or loss, right? Most people it's gain, right? Yeah. What else? What else related to metabolism?
Fatigue.
Fatigue, yep, being tired. Two very hallmark classic hypothyroid signs. What else? This goes in with your two, but we have temperature regulation. Most people will feel cold with it all the time, but it also is your ability to adapt to temperature changes. So one little nugget for you here is that if you go from like one extreme temperature, case in point right now, like from 100-degree parking lot to 70-degree building, and like you immediately feel your physiology change, all right, your thyroid is not working very well, or it could be vice versa to that. Or if you go from room temperature, hot shower, out of the hot shower back to room temperature, and you like feel like you hit a wall, also thyroid is struggling with that as well, okay? So those are the ones with that. All right, how about heart?
Palpitations.
Most people, it goes slow. Heart rate will be slow. Yep, it would rate typically a raised HDL, LDL would be up because it's trying to counteract the inflammation in the body. And then this kind of goes with kidneys as well, but the other big one then is you get fluid retention, okay? All right, digestive. How about digestive?
Diarrhea, constipation.
Yep. Another hallmark one. And let's define constipation, because remember, a lot of these symptoms here, constipation is, I think, technically defined as like you have one bowel movement every couple of days or 2-3 days. But for me, if you're not having if you're eating 3 meals a day and you're not having 3 bowel movements a day, you're constipated because your body's not properly digesting your food and breaking it down. So I would call that in there, but that's the medical definition there. What's another big one with that? Bloating, okay. How about muscle?
Weight muscle.
Weakness, yep. And what's another big one that you would feel? Yeah, aches and pains, right? So that's kind of just the general, I don't feel very good. How about brain?
Brain
fog.
Yes, brain fog, that's the big one there. Mood? Not so much that severe, but definitely the fogginess of just like, you get it, but like it takes you a while. Mood?
Depression.
A little bit. There's one that's more classic with it. Irritability, yeah. Irritability, anger. They define it as irritability. Bone? What's that? Decreased, yep. Osteopenia and osteoporosis, big with that. Integumentary, which is hair, skin, and nails. Dry, brittle nails, right. Thinning of the hair especially. Another hallmark sign is the outer third of the eyebrow being much less defined than the middle and inner part of your eyebrows there is a thyroid problem. So hormonal is then going to be heavy bleeding, right? Menstrual issues for women, right, too. But there's also issues with the men, but it's more, commonly with women there. Okay. So again, there's a lot of things that are related to the thyroid because the thyroid controls a lot as well. So this is brutal. I should have tested this out here. It's all right. All right, now here's some other interesting things about the thyroid and why it's so important. So there's actually 20 million people, all right, in the United States that they estimate that have thyroid issues, which is about 1 in 12 or so, as far, 1 in, I think, 8 adults it is. The interesting part is that 60%, okay, don't know that they have a thyroid problem. And part of that, or maybe they don't necessarily, they don't know they have a thyroid, but they have not been diagnosed with a thyroid problem. And part of that is because of the typical medical scenario that I'm going to walk in through right now. So all these symptoms here, right, that didn't erase very well, just so you can remember them extra good. What happens is, and I see this time and time again with patients, is that they will come in, they had 1 or 5 of these symptoms, so you were consulting with Dr. Google, right? And therefore you're like, I wonder if I have a thyroid problem. So you go to your medical doctor, right? And you're like, I think I have a thyroid problem because of X, Y, and Z. And he's probably like, you might be right, but let's run some tests, right? So what are the 2 tests, blood tests that they run?
TSH.
Okay. And what's T3 is not the next most common one. They run these 2, it's T4, exactly. All right. So you get your TSH and your T4 run, and you're not in what they would call like a disease state, right? So I think TSH goes up to like 4.0, T4 maybe 2 point something or whatever, but you're not outside of those major ranges, so they say, oh, sorry, you actually don't have a thyroid problem after all. Now, let's talk about what's interesting as to why, because for the number of things that can be run for the thyroid, there's about 12 of them actually. Why do they only run? And a lot of them will do this on a standard panel, right? They'll just throw it in your normal CBC or whatever it is. Why do they only run TSH and T4?
Insurance?
Partly, probably, I can't say that for sure. But the reason being is that there was a drug that came out a couple decades ago. Yep. Okay, or the generic is levothyroxine. And these drugs have specific mechanisms on TSH and T4 only. There is not another drug out on the market. I mean, there's Armour Thyroid, which they say is a more natural, it's like a pig desiccated one. It's still, it doesn't matter, it still only operates and helps these 2 variables right here anyways. So, in my opinion, I can't say I've ever talked to an endocrinologist specifically about this, but if there's not something that we can do about something that we would find, then it's almost like why run it to a certain degree, especially like just your primary doctor, right? An endocrinologist is oftentimes going to run a more in-depth, but usually they only do that though if you have an abnormal TSH or an abnormal T4. Then they might do more tests, but they still won't. Many people get the door shut on them too early in the process because of this. Now, there probably is no surprise here. There are many other ways to diagnose hypothyroidism, or even in this, which is way more common, but also hyperthyroidism by looking at the other blood markers that the thyroid can test, which we're going to go over too. The other problem with this then is that I've never met someone under primary medical care. Listen, this is a good point for me to do a disclaimer. I can't take you off medication or legally tell you to stop taking medications and all those things, nor give you guidance on that. But I've never met a person under solely medical care for the thyroid that ever saw a decreased dosage at one point or got off the dosage for that matter. More importantly, gotten off of it. And the main thing is that the way the thyroid works is there's something called a negative feedback loop, and I don't want to get too hung up on that. But it basically, long story short, what that means is that the more of this you take, the less of these your body makes. So that's the story, right? You get put on TSH, low dose when you start. 15 years later, your dose has gone up every couple of years, and next thing you know, they're like, you're at the max dose, or you're too shaky and too jittery, but your thyroid's still off. So now they're like, well, now you go to an endocrinologist. Meanwhile, your thyroid's crushed at this point because you did the medication or you didn't get to the cause of why your thyroid is off in the first place. And now they have another option. We can start taking pieces of it out, or we can burn it, with radiation, or, it just starts getting real dicey at that point, right? And that's why. And again, it's not a conspiracy or anything. It's just that there's no other different solution medically other than either the drugs, right, or the more invasive stuff as time goes on. So it's super important to figure out and to dig in here on the cause of why your thyroid is off and why you're having those symptoms in the first place. Remember, symptoms aren't the only thing, but they can be a guide as far as where to look more in depth in your body. So here are the primary things that throw thyroid off. And honestly, this is the same for really any condition disease, but we're going to break these down specifically for the thyroid. So we got stress, inflammation, toxins, environments, and a lot of these have some overlapping. Nutrient deficiencies, specific ones, all right? Autoimmunity, and then gut, all right? So a lot of these are kind of connected here. Really, inflammation is all of them, but toxins and environment are really big right there as well, okay?
What were the major side effects of those two medications that you talked about?
Not positive. I really don't study them a whole lot because they just don't interest me.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, no. All right, so we're going to break through all those. Next thing I want to do, though, is I want to go through, because I'm going to show you how this all comes together, all right? So you have a thyroid, right? And the thyroid has a specific job. Remember, every organ in your body is dumb from the standpoint of it doesn't know what to do unless something is telling it what to do, specifically from the brain, right? So within the brain, inside of the brain, there's a section called the hypothalamus, all right? That is going to secrete a hormone called TRH, or thyroid releasing hormone, which that chemical translates to the anterior pituitary gland. Now this is inside the blood-brain barrier. Okay, the hypothalamus is, the anterior pituitary is outside, which is important, okay? So we'll kind of put a little barrier around that. The anterior pituitary, let's see if anybody's got it. Anybody have a guess of what that secretes?
TSH.
Got it, very good. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which then that goes to your thyroid, okay? Now we're tracking, so what's the next step? Let's see who's got it.
T3 and T4.
Pick one.
T3.
Nope, wrong. T4. Good try though. You're at 50. You got it in the right ballpark. T4. T4, which is also known as the inactive form of thyroid, is going to become T3. Very good, right? And then T3, the active form, is then going to go to any and every, cell inside of your body to do its thing, to interact with the cell wall, the membrane, and make that happen. Now, let's go through here a couple of key parts. So, this works pretty well independently. The only major thing that is going to block this step right here would be mercury or other heavy metals, Mercury does have the ability to pass through the blood-brain barrier, unfortunately, which then becomes very problematic. So this is really the only thing that can get it from the top, Also, I want to add in here, because they're connected, the adrenals. I have a role in this too, so I'm going to put a little dash line with that. So now to go from the pituitary to the through TSH. What TSH needs is going to be magnesium, zinc, and B12. Now other things, but these are by far the top 3 biggest ones with that. So, again, let's start thinking logically here, right? If your TSH levels, right, are lower, they're struggling, well, it would be good to start looking at what nutrients are needed, right, to help that process be driven forward. Also, iodine is here too.
How do you do that with blood? With blood work? Supplement?
Yep, specialized tests. Not all.
Yeah.
There's all these can be tested normally through blood work, but yeah, they're kind of tricky to pick off. Now, the thyroid releasing then T4. What's needed at that is also iodine, zinc, B2, all right, and then vitamin C. So again, we can start picking this apart. And I'm going to do this with each step. If your TSH levels are normal, and I wouldn't even say normal. Normal, we should actually establish this first. Remember, there is, for any blood test, there is a normal, all right? And let's just kind of summarize what that means. They've taken data from hundreds of millions of Americans and kind of compared that and figured out what the standard deviations are. The majority of people fall in this range, X percentage fall outside of that. Well, if we think about who they're pulling from, what's the health of the average American? Amazing or toilet? Toilet. So you're essentially being put in a range with other people in the toilet, right? So there's the normal, but there's more importantly, there's an optimal. All right? We want to be in the optimal, obviously, right? Many people in the normal, but outside the optimal ranges, will feel like crap and have thyroid symptoms, okay? So it's very important. So we're looking for driving optimum health here. So if you have normal, or better yet, optimal TSH levels, but you have suboptimal T4 levels, right? You can see how you can start identifying what would be the likely nutrients that your body would be needing to start increasing your T4 levels, right? Iodine, zinc, B2, vitamin C, right? So T4 now, which is in the blood, is then going to pass into either a muscle cell or a liver. Most of it's the liver, to be converted into T3, the active one. At this step, it requires selenium and zinc. Okay, again. So you can see here there's kind of a pattern, right? You got zinc a lot, iodine a lot, right? And hint, you're going to see selenium a lot here as well. Now for T3 then, to make its way to the cell, you need zinc and selenium again. All right? But also then when we get to the cell receptor, in order to make that properly bind there, you need vitamin D3 and vitamin A. So if you have, again, let's just kind of walk through some scenarios here. Normal TSH, or optimal, optimal, optimal. If you still feel like crap and have all the symptoms with it, right? This would be the first place that I would look, is that you're having problems with binding to the actual cells themselves. So either a vitamin D or a vitamin A deficiency, or maybe both, okay, with that. Now there's another key thing that happens right here, or may or may not happen. There's another marker called reverse T3, okay? And that will increase primarily, the number one thing that affects that is going to be stress, all right? But also toxins, or also a decrease or not enough selenium will also do that too, but I would put them in that order of likelihood, okay? Reverse T3, technically it's actually more from here, sorry. Reverse T3 will actually compete and bind with T3 levels. So, in my opinion, if you're not running reverse T3 along with T3, T4, TSH, right, you literally could have no idea what's going on inside your body. Because you could be producing normal T3, but if you see elevated reverse T3, then we know that there's probably a stress issue going on, or toxicity issue going on, or decrease, because this will compete. So meaning that T3 cannot bind to the receptor and make all the DNA inside of it happy and do its thing, okay? So very important to know about reverse T3. The other thing that why this is so important, and I'm just going to mention this now, but this also has a negative feedback loop on that too, so it'll actually go back and forget if it's here. I don't want to tell you wrong because I forget right now, but it either stops it here or here. I think it's here. I think it's the anterior pituitary, and it'll tell it to stop over time producing all this then, because if it's the body's in a stress mode right here, if this just kind of keeps funneling there, it's just going to keep driving hormonal imbalance. So remember, your body is very smart. It knows everything that it's doing almost always. Okay, there's very few times when your body gets that confused. It is doing the best with what it can with what you're giving it. So iodine, all right, selenium, and zinc are by far the top 3 minerals needed for proper thyroid health. Iodine is really the most deficient of the 3 for us, and really for the world. It's #1 deficiency worldwide for that. But you got to be very careful, which we're talking about Hashimoto's, the autoimmune, in a second with iodine, because if you just start taking a bunch of iodine, it would make you worse, all right, potentially make you worse, okay? So now let's go, I want to go over all the rest of the markers. I know I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but that's all right. Are we tracking?
Yes.
We're tracking, all right. So here are the markers to properly test thyroid. Like I said, do you see how it's stopping here? That would be like going on one date with somebody and then marrying them the next, right? And you just don't have all the information, right? I don't know, that might have been a bad analogy. TSH, T4, T3, free T4, free T3, which I didn't break this down as finely tuned as it could be. TPO, which are thyroid peroxidase, all right? These 2 are the Hashimoto's or autoimmune markers, very important. Reverse T3, there's another thing called T3 uptake. Not super clinically important, but it does fit in with the puzzle. And then thyroid binding globulin, which is a big one, because if you have estrogen dominance, this will increase. So this is, again, if you know how the body works, this is up. You already know you have estrogen dominance going on, and there's a whole pathway marker for that. Here's the crazy part, though, too. This is why this is so important. I have tested people that have had normal thyroid markers, but have had elevated autoimmune antibodies, right? So they literally have autoimmune thyroid disease, but all these other markers. So if they had just stopped here, what would have happened was their thyroid just would eventually become so destroyed that it would have taken years of destruction before all these things would have started going on, but then it would have been too late, okay? That's why it's very important to get the no picture. By the way, they estimate between 60 to 80% of people that have hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's. So meaning, even if you know you have hypothyroidism, there's a very high chance you actually have the autoimmune version of it. The reason why, again, even if you have hypothyroid, let's say your TSH is off, it's elevated, which means you have hypothyroidism and all. The reason why they very still often will still not test this just to rule it in or rule it out is there is no different medication that they would give you if you have Hashimoto's compared just to regular hypothyroidism. But how you would personally take charge of your health, very different. Well, not different, more in depth is required for this right here, because you're dealing with an autoimmune condition at that point. So super important to know that, right? So do you see how, that's a lot, right? So oh, my thyroid is fine. Well, according to who, okay? With all that. Any questions so far while I erase? And oh, by the way, good luck trying to get your doctor to run those tests for you.
Yeah.
At least your medical doctor. Sorry.
Can you request them? Like,
You can.
They look
I'm just
at you
saying.
like you have
Well,
four
well,
heads.
Yeah.
Most of them really do.
why not? Even if you pay for it yourself, the labs.
Most of them, they don't want their hands
Because
dirty
if
with it
they,
at all.
if they find out that they don't have anything to treat it, then what are they gonna do? Why run the test?
Yeah.
You'll do them
So when they think it's a waste of time and
But
all
then
that
you
kind of
would know
stuff.
it and you could help with.
Will you run those panels?
But remember, it doesn't, yeah, oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
They don't, I'll talk more about that kind of towards the end there, but
Okay.
the bottom line is they don't treat it, so why, like, they have nothing different to recommend for you, even if it shows up, right? It's just like, well, here's either the Synthroid or the not, so, all right. First thing we gotta talk about is stress, okay? And I gotta tell you, like, going through very, very, very advanced training on condition after condition after condition, from the smartest people in the world, right? It never fails, every lecture, okay, that I listen to. Can you find me a different marker? I think this one's going bad here. Every lecture that I listen to, they will, like I've listened to 50 of these so far, almost every single one, if not every single one, carves out a major chunk out of their presentation, smartest people in the world, to talk about how this affects and contributes to whatever disease they might be talking about. Cancer, hypothyroidism, dementia, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. It doesn't matter. Every single one of it, or if not every single one, almost every single one is to mark that off. Now, what's the actual practicality of that? Well, most people, like you don't. And listen, we're all guilty of this, but like we're just unwilling to actually do something about the stress levels in your life. It's like we're like, what's the word when like a person like, what's the diagnosis when you like it? Is it as a masochist when you like love the pain or something? Is that right? It's like we love to like destroy ourselves. It's like every time we talk to that person, whether it's family or not, it's like it ruins our day. But it's like yet we still freaking answer the phone when they call, right? Or we continually put ourselves in positions because we have to be a martyr, fall on a sword. But every single time we put ourselves in that situation, it's like it just throws your body off. So I'm telling you, like, this is killing. I mean, it literally is killing every single one of us. It's just killing some of us faster than others, right? And so I don't necessarily have good answers for you because how stress is dealt with or managed is going to be different for everybody. I mean, one good thing is you find what makes you happy and do more of that, right? But there are certainly things like deep breathing, right? Exercises, specifically nasal, all nose, in through the nose, out through the nose. That's shown to reduce the effective levels of stress. Of course, getting proper sleep, right? Less blue light, less screens, less technology, and if you have to use that, you're wearing filtered glasses, blue light glasses that are blocking that.
Meditation.
Yeah, that would kind of go along with that for sure. Yep.
Yoga.
Same thing that would go along with that too. So, but really, it's got to happen. Now, the reason why this is so big is because of a hormone called cortisol. And there's many of them, but that's the main one. All right. How many heard of cortisol? I've talked about it a bunch. Yeah, most people have heard of that. Okay. The thing is that this directly shuts down and inhibits T4, and it actually, what inhibits and it affects TSH too. So it shuts them down. Also, the more of this you have, it actually fatigues the pituitary gland. So remember I showed you that thing up here before, the one outside the brain right there? It starts to actually, they found people that are chronically stressed, that thing actually shrinks, right? Well, if your organ in your body shrinks, it probably can't do as much as it's supposed to. Also, cortisol will cause inflammation specifically in the cell walls, okay? Let me actually draw the cell back up here for a second, all right? Because I'll need that in a little bit. So what gland in your body produces the majority of your cortisol?
Adrenal.
Very good, yeah, the adrenals. Now, most people that have a thyroid issue, especially if they've had it for a little while, also have adrenal issues because what happens is that as your thyroid function begins to go down, your adrenal glands, because they're kind of sisters, or they're brothers from another mother, right? They kind of share some of the same responsibilities. The adrenals will begin to pick up the slack, all right? And then my mentor, Dr. Dan Pompa, calls the adrenals then become the whipping boy from the standpoint of the whip, the horse. So it's like thyroid's shutting down, that's not working very well, so the body's just whipping the adrenal glands to squeeze every ounce of hormone, catecholamines and everything out of that. But eventually the adrenal gland just gives up and it starts going to fatigue and eventually exhaustion right there. So the issue though is that most of the people, you'll find that your symptoms of adrenal fatigue look very close to the thyroid. And so because you went to your doctor and your doctor said your thyroid levels are normal, you're focusing on your adrenal glands, but what's happening is you're downstream that. So you're essentially just like kind of dumping water out of a sinking ship, right? You just or like a ship that has holes in it. You're just trying to, you will never fully heal if you only attack the downstream version right there. So we got to go upstream, which ultimately is the brain, right? And there's specific things of that, but then the thyroid. So for most people, you fix your thyroid, the adrenal issues over time will balance themselves out. But adrenal fatigue is kind of a buzzword, right now. So many people are like focusing on my adrenals are fatigued. It's like, well, they might just be fatigued because of something else, right? So that's where the whole, functional medicine approach, and a good functional medicine doctor are not just going to throw you on adrenal supplements and thyroid supplements and all this stuff, just trying to, hopefully one of them works, but it's doing the best to identify what's the likely cause and going on with that. Okay, so, and it's almost cliche to talk about stress, but I don't know. If I don't say it, I'm robbing you guys of one of the most important things that to get well is to work on that. So if anybody ever figures out the secret sauce, let me know. The point is you got to work at it. You just got to work at it, all right? So nutrient deficiencies, okay? Iodine is the big one, right? Probably the most prominent one for most people. Selenium, like I said, is the other one. And then zinc, okay? So iodine, back in the, World War II probably, I guess, and even World War I, they started putting all the iodine inside the salt because people were getting swollen necks from goiters and everything. Problem is that processed iodized salt is really unhealthy for you, all right? So a lot of people then that have shifted into doing sea salt with not having foods that are rich in iodine, many people are getting deficient in iodine again, all right? So it's really, really, really important. Personally, I supplement with iodine, not every day. I do it probably 3 times a week. I do it when I fly. Every single time I fly, I do that. Getting up in the atmosphere, the radiation, I watched it wasn't a documentary, but it was kind of like a thing on Chernobyl. Anybody see that? Super good, really interesting because I think from what I read, they did a good job at recounting history as much as the Soviets would release anyways, right? But when they started handing out iodine pills when the nuclear reactor blew up because you're almost certain to get thyroid cancer. So the iodine protects against radiation specifically to the thyroid gland there. Selenium, easiest way to get this is through Brazil nuts. All right, it's the easiest, most nutrient-rich version of selenium. Okay, for that. And very important to take that short-term selenium, I'd say 90 days, and it's best to do that at nighttime. If your numbers don't improve with selenium, and remember going back at the chart there, then you likely have a gut or a malabsorption issues. Your body's just not maintaining it, but you can become selenium toxic too if you take too much with that. Selenium is also very important because it protects against iodine toxicity. So with that, selenium is critical for Hashimoto people, or the autoimmune, all right? Because for 90% of them or more, people with Hashimoto's, they have too much iodine, it actually accelerates the process of autoimmunity for that. So Brazil nuts huge. Zinc, you can Google foods high in zinc very easily, all right? I'm not going to go through every single one, but the Brazil nuts is the key one there for that.
Is that every day or?
The Brazil nuts? Yeah, I would do it every day for like I said, 90 days and look for improvement there. Yeah. And at nighttime is better because it kind of helps some of the other hormones in your body function better too. So, a good thyroid supplement is going to have both like more than adequate amounts of both iodine and selenium in it, right? So that's another way to look at it too. And then D3 is the other big vitamin deficiency as well. So if you're not getting your vitamin D tested at least twice a year, you are missing out on something that is probably shortening your life by a decade if you're not dialed in with that. So what do I know though? All right, blood sugar. That was a writer downer, by the way, testing vitamin D twice. I would do it once in the summer. I would do it at the end of summer and maybe at the end of winter is a good time to do that, or beginning of summer, beginning of winter, just kind of keep it the same with that. I would do it every 6 months like that. All right, so blood sugar. Metabolic syndrome, okay, now kind of being referred to as diabetes type 3, right? Or pre-diabetes. 50 million Americans have metabolic syndrome. Many very smart people, like economists in the medical world, believe that metabolic syndrome alone will bankrupt our country because of how much that affects inside the body. Because metabolic syndrome increases your risk of cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. You know, we're talking about crippling things in the body. Insulin resistance, which kind of goes before metabolic syndrome. Oops. Resistance. Check this out. 105 million Americans have that. Basically, if your insulin level is above 8, I think that's nanograms per deciliter. Could be wrong on that, but I know it's like, they say 3 to 20 is what like a LabCorp normal range is. If you're above 8, you're insulin resistant. The issue here is that both of these things here, right, accelerate Hashimoto's. The destruction of your thyroid, basically. Also, blood sugar. When you think of that, if this is abnormal blood sugar, this is a sloppy marker. You might as well just convert that to inflammation, all right, in your head. So all this does is it drives inflammation up like crazy. So you gotta get this under control. All right, best way here, of course, decrease the sugar, blah, 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 grains, right? Increase healthy fats, decrease the frequency of your eating, AKA fasting. As long as your adrenals are okay, you can go really hardcore with that, but you can certainly do intermittent fasting, or at least cut the snacking, right? Every single time you eat, even if you eat a healthy snack, your body has to secrete insulin. Every single time you do that, it's creating inflammation in your body. A little bit of inflammation is totally normal and totally okay. A lot of inflammation is totally abnormal and totally not okay with that. So blood sugar is a big one. Again, you're looking at, if that's even a little bit out of control, it's likely taking a decade off of your life. So that is one thing for my people that like really want to go in depth with losing weight and really get dialed in on that. What you do is you get a blood sugar monitor like a diabetic would, and you start tracking yourself every single day, or at least every single day for a while, and figure out what caused your blood sugar to go up too much, because I've seen people drinking black coffee spikes their blood sugar. The only way to know that is if you test though, right? You think, well, how would that happen? I don't know, but it spikes it up, okay? From that. Some people, certain vegetables, you think that'd be very low glycemic, spike them up. So the only way to know is to test. So the one I like is the Keto Mojo. You can get it on Amazon, because it tests ketone markers and blood sugar, the same one. It's like, the monitor itself is not that expensive, it's just the dang strips are so expensive, but that's why you can want, it's good motivation to get it dialed in very well. Okay. Next thing I want to do is gut, because that's going to kind of lead into the Hashimoto's piece there. Major things here are going to be dysbiosis, hypochlorhydria, and I'll talk about these in a second here. These are the fancy terms. Something called LPS or lipopolysaccharides, and then also a sluggish gallbladder. These are the four biggest things. Dysbiosis, okay, so bio means life, dys means dysfunctional, so this is your gut flora being off. Hypochlorhydria, you have hydrochloric acid in your stomach. It's the first kind of digestive juice, so you have a decrease in stomach acid. Lipopolysaccharides get elevated when you have leaky gut because you're having an immune reaction of things happening outside of your intestinal lining. And then sluggish gallbladder, that's probably pretty self-explanatory, but essentially if that is not breaking fat down properly, it just creates a lot of issues inside of your digestive system. So I could do a whole seminar on just one of these markers here, but just know that your gut is a major factor in your thyroid health beyond the symptoms that you'd experience. So your takeaways from these should be of the following. If you're like, I'm tracking this far, yeah, I got my blood sugar, maybe it's not perfect, but it's pretty well dialed in. It's my stress levels, hey, it's not perfect, but I got it pretty well dialed in. My gut, I haven't really ever done much testing or work there. Maybe that's the next place I look. That should be kind of how you should be filtering and processing this here a little bit too. So remember, this is not things necessarily that are symptomatic. Testing is really important for that. So there's myself or many other doctors in the area that can help walk you through the specifics, on that. But the issue here, when your gut is off, especially, you're going to be dealing with autoimmune issues. In the case of the thyroid, you got Hashimoto's by far, but also Graves too, which I'm not going to talk about, which is the hyperthyroidism one, but this is the main one right here. Remember, so what do we say? 20 million people have thyroid issues, and we know 60 to 80% of them. So what? Just quick math. That's like 12 to 15, 18 million, somewhere there, have Hashimoto's in the United States. That's a lot. Okay, so that's a big difference. The only way, if you have the Hashimoto's, okay, well, the first thing you got to do, all right, is you got to fix the gut, and that's with any autoimmune condition, multiple sclerosis, right? Lupus, all those things. You got to go back to the gut, because without healing and sealing your gut, your immune system will never calm down and stop attacking itself there. Okay, kind of related here would be a couple of infections. Infections can also drive up inflammation. The one that I run into the most, believe it or not, is Epstein-Barr virus, aka mono, aka the kissing disease. So I always tease people, like, who you been kissing lately? But it's actually not that funny, because this is a very, very, very tough virus to kill. The vast majority of people that have this are asymptomatic. So the only way to know is a test, okay, if you have that. Also, the other one that I see next most common, cytomegalovirus, CMV, all right? So those are, again, blood markers that can be tested and run. The interesting part here is that the American Cancer Institute says that 15 to 20% of all cancers are caused by viruses, okay? Because it depletes your immune system. Just a side note. All right, I know I'm going pretty fast here, because I could do a 10-hour seminar on this, and maybe one day I will, but that's not tonight. Any questions so far? Just shout it out, because I'm not looking. No questions? Cool.
What's the best way to heal your gut?
Depends upon what's causing it.
If the viruses are killing
So a
them?
layperson.
The viruses wouldn't necessarily affect the gut too much, but a compromised gut would limit your body's ability to kill those viruses. That's the connection there.
Oh.
The viruses don't cause the leaky gut; you're harder to kill it. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's like asking what's the best way to heal the thyroid. Well, it depends upon what's happening in the thyroid. When you get into a one-size-fits-all equation, then you have the American medical community that's sucking, right? It's like there's just really no easy way to say it with that. Okay? Well, or their version of what that looks like, but yeah. All right, so I want to talk about toxins, and some of you maybe have seen me draw this before in other contexts, but that's okay. So when we think about toxins, the main impact you have to remember is what it's doing to your cells. And honestly, that's really for anything. Within each and every single one of the cells in your body, all right, there's 2 layers of specialized fat and proteins called a lipid fat, right, bilayer 2. And through this is where nutrients are going to come in, or things like thyroid hormone, and then the body, right, the DNA and all the, mitochondria, everything makes waste, and then the waste is going to be jettisoned out. Think of like a little mini version of you, right? You need to bring food in, you need to poop food out, right? Or what's left over with it. When there are toxins, the worst kind of toxins are what's known as fat soluble. Okay, and the majority of all toxins almost are. In fact, I don't know of any ones that are not fat soluble. So what that means is they have an affinity, or they have an ability to bind and even get into that lipid, right, fat bilayer. When they do that, they create inflammation, swelling, right? And now all of these receptors that were here trying to receive messages for action have a much harder time binding to that because there's damage, there's scarring, right? All kinds of things going on at a cellular level. So from a toxin standpoint, again, going back to the main ones, we're going to see mercury, lead, which is PB is the scientific for that. Also, you have aluminum. Those are the by far the most damaging ones to the body, but specifically the endocrine and nervous system. Okay, because remember, these can also bind and go through the blood-brain barrier, so they can actually affect you up as high as the brain level. All right. But along with that, we'd have things like xenoestrogens, which are very common in personal care products, especially. Also, plastics have a lot of xenoplastics, like BPA, phthalates. All right. From that, okay. So those are some other big ones from that. Also, here we got which creates this here is going to be biotoxins. Most common one, living in the southeast, would be what? Starts with an ends with old. Mold. Next one, Lyme, another co-infections. Big problem down here and increasing. And remember, you can have any of these things and not necessarily be horribly symptomatic on an outward level, because a lot of this here is what we call silent, which means it's not necessarily presenting with a very obvious symptom, but it's causing disruption going inside of your body. Big ones for the thyroid are going to be fluorine, bromine, or fluoride, bromide, right? Those are the 2 main ones here. Because if you remember back to the little periodic table of elements, everybody remember that horrific chart, right? These are in the same column, called the halides, in the same column as iodine. So they are on a molecular level, they're very similar, very similar. So fluorine and bromine, okay, can displace, and that's the key word here, especially bromide or bromine, they can displace iodine. So literally you can have normal iodine in your body, but it'll literally kick it off cells and out of organs, because it'll take the place of that. So, I think fluorine or fluoride is pretty easy. Major sources of that. Yep, water. Toothpaste, water, yep. So, filtering your water with a fluoride filter is a no-brainer. Getting a toothpaste that is fluoride-free, a no-brainer. It's another big one this time of year. Yep.
Chlorine.
Yeah, so chlorine would be on here too, but it's not as. Actually, the majority of pools
A lot of them
are bromide and bromine. Okay? So another hallmark sign, if you have a thyroid problem you maybe didn't know about, is if you go in a hot tub, especially these are hot tubs, all right? And you feel like crap when you get out of it or not that long after, it's because all that bromine is knocking your body around there. But also bromide big in breads, soft drinks, fire retardants or flame retardants, so your mattresses, your pillows, right, all of those have chemical retardants on there unless you get them made chemical free. They off-gas. On average, I think this would fall in the same there, but I do know formaldehyde, which is one of the main ones in a flame retardant, will off-gas for 7 to 10 years, so you just breathe it in every night when you go to sleep. Hot tub swimming pools, and also pesticides, right? So if the pest guy shows up and sprays your yard and you feel like crap after that, it's because of all that too. So you just gotta be very, very, very mindful of those things there too. But yeah, bread was an interesting one for bromide and bromine. I didn't know about that. And soft drinks is the big one. Actually, Mountain Dew is the biggest culprit.
Oh my gosh.
Has the highest amount of bromine, which is not funny because I used to drink those like 6 to 12 a day back in the day. So thankfully I stopped that. I'm like, do I still have a thyroid? I'm not sure from that. So, all right, and then, you know, again, I could do a whole seminar on Hashimoto's, and I've kind of been talking about it along the way here. Remember, though, here's the key thing. You can have normal TSH and normal T4 and have Hashimoto's, okay? You know what the annoying thing is? For a cash price to run the thyroid antibodies, they cost between like $12 and $15. It's like pennies, you know what I mean, to do that. So, like, this is a no-brainer, just to know whether you have it or not. Remember, the vast majority of people with hypothyroidism do have that, but you gotta test it to know for sure. If you just have plain old hypothyroidism and not Hashimoto's, easy to fix, like super easy. Like, basically, you just get some iodine, zinc, and selenium flooding in your body, and like you're gonna start feeling well very quickly, unless there's something like heavy metal toxicity going on, then you'll spin your wheels a little bit. If you have this, remember you almost certainly cannot do iodine at all, because you'll make yourself worse. Selenium is very good for people with Hashimoto's, very, 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 very good, partly because, remember, it helps to block iodine from becoming problematic there. But from here, you gotta go on autoimmune. Basically, I mean, there would be one customized for Hashimoto's, right? But if you get on any type of autoimmune lifestyle changes, you're gonna find improvement, all right? So gut health, balance and stress, all the things that we talked about. Okay, last one that I want to cover here. And this is big right here. This is the factor when all else fails with normal blood work, the cell there comes back normal. All right, then you know, almost certainly can know that you're dealing with toxicity because, and not just from a thyroid standpoint, but like just your body's not working right despite normal lab tests. I mean, I would almost bet the farm on toxicity being a major issue because this process is happening, and therefore your body is, even with normal organ function, your cells cannot receive it properly. They're so huge. Now, big thing also too, you know, along with like kind of a functional medicine approaches for me is chiropractic, and there's actually some very interesting things. So it's actually on the wall up there too, but they found that there was 7,000 patients with Hashimoto's disease. It's a lot, it's a big study. And they found out that in the vertebra in the neck, if there was a decrease in disc spacing, okay, so like normal disc spacing, a decrease in disc spacing between the bones there present, it dramatically increased the risk of Hashimoto's or made it worse, right? So for those that aren't aware, if you don't take care of your spine, it starts to rot and break down. Just like if you didn't take care of your teeth, it's gonna rot and break down. Your spine is no different, all right? Most people, if you're under chiropractic care, you know, with me or somebody else, awesome. I can almost guarantee you though, if your spine was on your face, you would have started chiropractic a long time ago. I'm serious, right? It's just that it's like if it's out of sight, it's out of mind right there, right? And that's why I get so many people coming in and it's a train wreck before they even ever felt anything. Well, if you didn't take care of if you're 40 years old, you didn't take care of your teeth for 40 years and you went to a dentist for the first or maybe a handful of times, he's gonna be like, what the heck? Have you been brushing your teeth with a freaking hammer, like it gets destroyed from that too. So chiropractic is absolutely wonderful at preventing that and super, super important. Also, chiropractic is going to increase function. The thyroid gland actually, of course, sits in the neck, right? Like kind of right around here. So we have, 7 cervical vertebra, meaning neck bones, all right, in your neck there. 4, 5, and 6 all feed the thyroid gland. I can't tell you how many times I've had a patient coming in with a thyroid issue, or all the symptoms of a thyroid problem before we did like super, in-depth blood work, right? And like sure enough, this part of their neck is trash, or in partly trash right there. And of course, if it can't get a good nerve signals going into the thyroid from the brain, right? How is that thyroid ever going to know what to do properly? It's going to suffer, okay? But also, so chiropractic, is going to work on increasing function. It's going to improve your healing, right? Because your nervous system controls everything, including your healing. It decreases stress. They actually found that people that were under long-term chiropractic care had a decrease in salivary cortisol. All right, so even if they didn't have any symptoms, they had a symptom in a long time, but the longer they were under care, their cortisol levels went down, which is pretty cool from that. And the other thing is that chiropractic is also going to be very important for balancing the immune system, specifically Th1, Th2, which I'm not going to go into, but there's 2 different types of immune responses, and there's a Th1 and Th2. In an autoimmune situation, these go in opposite directions, or vice versa. So chiropractic works to help balance that, along with some other things right there too. So big components. Some of you may be here if you've been on the thyroid journey, the thyroid merry-go-round for a long time. This may be what you're missing if you're not doing that specifically. Okay. That's all the material that I wanted to cover, which is awesome because I never finish on time. I want to go over a couple more things here, though, because I know I'll have questions, but I also want to talk about some potential solutions that I can offer or attempt to offer. Any good doctor will never make guarantees, but any good doctor will guarantee that they will give it their best and not stop until they figure it out. I fall in that category, right? Or at least try to. So here's what we do. So in our office, we have a chiropractic component. We have a functional, what we call functional medicine component. I don't really like that. I like to call it, because I hate the word medicine, so we'll call it the functional health component right there. By far and away, my patients that do both of these, especially when there's something pretty severe going on, do the best, all right? But they do kind of operate independently. So to get a chiropractic evaluation, all right, in my office, it's normally $220 for our initial intake. So thorough exam, history, full sets of x-rays, right? What we do for our seminars and things is that we can give a maximum legal discount of 60%, which means $88 for that, okay? For functional medicine, that kind of operates more off the hour because that's a lot more time intensive. So I normally do $200 for like a consult for functional medicine. But anybody that wants to sign up and do one with me from the seminar here tonight will be $100, all right? Now the thing with this is that, like I said, because it's time sensitive, we got some paperwork that is extremely in depth. Part of it is because you'd rather fill that out on your own time rather than pay me to ask you the questions, okay, for all that. So and part of it, the reason why it's 40 pages, just so you know, or maybe just under 40 pages, because it goes super deep. I also use that paperwork to weed people out that are not serious. So if they take it forever, I will know if you're serious if you flip that paperwork back to me within 24 to 48 hours. Then I know I'm going to work. People that take a week, usually we don't ever progress, because if you can't sit down, if you're not that serious about filling out those paperwork, like you're probably not going to be that serious about making lifestyle changes, right? From that too. So there's a super in-depth questionnaire which we'll go through, and you do that questionnaire before the consult, because then I can help you work through that. And then from there, if you're like, have some really big, red flags, or again, we can dial in, then we can look at lab testing, right? Look at thyroid panel that I showed before, which just so you know, it costs to do it, like the full one, I think it's a couple $100 to run it from A to Z, all right, to do it. So it's not like insanely expensive, but it's also not just, pennies on the dollar either. So, that would be important if you've never had, and for some of you who've had thyroid lab tests done fairly recently, and I would say fairly recently within 6 months, we can cherry pick some of the ones that you didn't get, right, and kind of complete the picture there too. So we can, depending on where you're at in your journey. Based on this here, then we figure out supplements and lifestyle, okay? The changes that need to be made, and the question is very heavy on known lifestyle disruptors, okay? So it helps us, again, just kind of get to that right away. Like I said before, toxicity is a big component there too, so depending on what type of toxins that you would have, there might need to be some heavy duty detoxification that goes on with that too, okay? So that one is 100. Now if you want to do both of them, if you're like, I know a lot of you are my patients here, so you're not going to do this, you've already done that. If you wanted to add, start this process, that's what that. If you're not my patient at all, and maybe you don't have a chiropractor, you're not, I don't know, happy or whatever, not maybe as in depth, we can combine that and do them both for 150. So that'd be on the same day, just for simplicity, so we do them both back to back. Kind of separate, but they're the same, if that makes sense. Probably not, but it's same goal, but just kind of two different avenues and different sort of processes to get there, all right? So if you want to do that, or either one of those, you can talk to the girls on the way out. These appointments do need to be prepaid, so I know my availability this week is almost gone, but I think there's a few spots left for this week here yet. But they can help find chunks of time for you to do that. That'll work with my schedule. So you'll prepay to reserve your appointment, and there'll be no charge when you come in for that, all right? And that's just because of how time intensive these are. If I have people like make an appointment and then don't show up, it really kills and slaughters my schedule big time. So that you're almost guaranteed to show up if you pay 100 bones down. If you pay a Benjamin down for it, okay? Hopefully anyways, maybe not. If not, I'll just take it and it's all good. It was easy money then, right? All right,